Alright guys, so now we are back with the showdown between the Vampire Coast, who shall be led by LUTHOR Harkin, and the High Elves, who are going to be led by Alarielle the Pigeonless. So yes, the tragedy is indeed true. She's going to be without her noble pigeon, which I'm sure she just left home in Averlorn. So as far as the build goes, we're of course going to be going with LUTHOR Harkin up in the skies, and basically I just got so tired of using Noctilus. I think that Noctilus is probably by far one of the best legendary lords in the game, if not the best. The amount of summons he can bring, I feel like he's certainly a little bit imbalanced. As such, I wanted to bring something that might be a little bit more entertaining for you guys, but also very good. And that's kind of, the tragedy of LUTHOR. Have you ever heard of the tragedy of LUTHOR Harkin? It's kind of like for him and, some of the other Vampire Coast lords, like, they're all pretty damn good, but they often don't see play simply because Noctilus is just so good. I mean, Noctilus has the free summons with the Ross Moondial. He's very tough to kill. His stats are great. He's an awesome duelist. He pretty much can do it all. And like, if you have any lapse in your formation, Noctilus is like, nope, got a band-aid for that, got a band-aid for that, got some flex tape for that. He's just always ready to go with those summons and just, his presence. He's just a beast. But LUTHOR Harkin is still really good. He's an insane assassin. He has pretty good range capabilities. He can kite. He can go in with the poison attacks, massive armor piercing. I mean, he does a ton of work. LUTHOR is a beast. And I actually really like him as a character. So we're going to be trying him out. LUTHOR, 2 Fellbats up here. And against the High Elves, you always have to bring Scurvy Dogs. So in total, I think I have 3 of these angry Scurvy Dogs here. So yeah, 1, 2, 3. And they're just basically for feasting on archers. So your opponent is often going to have Reavers or Silver Helms. And if they're chasing, your dogs with Silver Helms or Reavers, it's going to be pretty good. Of course, your micro is going to be tested, but if you can stay away and just kite them, and then when they eventually lose interest and decide to attack with their knights, that's when you swoop in on the archers and really get your value. So a couple dogs here. It looks like my opponent, yeah, those are going to be Silver Helms. So for the front line, it's just going to be Zombie Pirate Deckhand mobs. These guys just, rank and file, 8,640 HP, not much to say there. And of course, we do have the Colossus. I really like the Colossus in this matchup. It's very good at dealing with archers. It's good at shooting down heavy calves, Silver Helms, Reavers, Dragon Princes, you name it. It's good at, shooting dragons. I mean, the Colossus is just an absolute beast. Now, sometimes high elf players will get a little bit crazy and bring a couple bolt throws to really kind of poke it down, but for the most part, you can usually keep it out of range, and I think it's just such a good tool. We got a Vampire Caster as well, who does have Invocation of Nehek and Drown Dead. 2 Mortars here in the back. Now, Mortars are a very solid hidden gem against high elf archers, so they're going to be shooting downtown, just raining perpetual fire on the archers while I distract them with the Hounds. So even if the Hounds don't get into the cookie jar, so let's say a 100% fail of getting the Hounds in there, the Mortars will, at least be generating that value over the course of the whole battle, while the Hounds are serving as a bit of a distraction for the other troops. Couple halberds here in the back, and we do of course have the black spot, Zombie Pirate Gunnery Mob Regiment for now. So for my opponent's army, pretty solid stuff. He does have 3 groups of the Silver Helm, so it looks like these ones don't have shields. I'm not sure about the ones on the other side, but it looks like they're going to be shieldless, so just going cheap. A little bit wild for sure. I think the shields might be cost effective on those guys, but maybe he just needed a cut to kind of fit something in, I would imagine. But the rest of his army, pretty standard competitive stuff. You're just going to see White Lions in the front line, which are very good dual purpose. They're going to be able to beat all of your deckhand infantry, and if I do get a little bit wild in terms of infantry and I decide to bring Depth Guard or some angry crabs, they're going to be able to help against Depth Guard with their armor piercing and also punch through the crabs. Not incredibly quick, but they do give you some extra AP, which is always helpful. It's got a bunch of archers, and archers are kind of the bane of the Vampire Coast. They're very good against their own gun mobs. They have better range, really good arcs of fire, and are just solid. And honestly, enough archer fire can really focus down a Necrofex Colossus. Top of that, he's got a Noble on horseback, Alarielle with the Star of Averlorn, the Foz Protection, as well as Earthblood, and a bunch of spears. Yeah, some pretty good stuff here. So on that note, guys, let's get this show on the road and see how this battle goes. So not Noctilus, I'm so used to using it, it's just like stuck in my head. But the Necrofex Colossus is going to be going downtown on these archers here, doing some pretty good damage. And the mortars are also going to be raining some fire. The first volley coming in from the archers on top of the Fellbat. So I need to fall back. A little bit of sloppy micro there. I got a little bit caught up, and I am trying to slip some dogs in, but I see him moving for the White Lions. I was hoping the archers would like overextend a little bit and I could feast, but now was not the day. So Scurvy Dogs on the far side are going to be getting chased off by the Silver Helms, and the Fellbats I'm going to be running up and around the side and eventually attacking the archers. Now I was able to outmaneuver these Silver Helms over here by shooting them with the Colossus, then opening up the back line for these Scurvy Dogs. So we're going to be kind of Tokyo drifting in here, hopefully getting some pretty good damage. Scurvy Dogs, of course, I'm willing to kind of like concede that they're going to be falling and getting taken out by some of the infantry or supporting troops here, but I do get right into the archers, which is really, really good. In the meantime, LUTHOR Harkin is going to be jumping in the front line, just helping, and now that the archers and some of the other troops are a little bit inundated back here, you can see I do have the Fellbats attacking 2 groups of archers, and also the dogs are going to be attacking these 2. So pretty much all of the archers are temporarily shut down. And LUTHOR on his Terrorgeist isn't as much of a niche unit as like the Vampire Count's Terrorgeist, because he isn't reliant on a bonus versus large. He just has kind of like better stats overall, and you can see he's going to be feasting on some souls here, which is always good. So in the back, the mortars are still doing some pretty good work. He is trying to get some of these Silver Helms in the back, but they're going to be getting Last Samurai hardcore, and the black spot is just so damn good. These guys have anti-large, they have charge defense, so even if the Cav do charge them, I mean, it's going to look bad for them, but you can see they brace, they have anti-large, large, they're going to be able to fight back with, armor-piercing attacks. And for the most part, these cav are going to have to run. And when they run, they're just going to get shot in the back by these scurvy, shady pirates right here. Now, on the front line, it looks like the white lines, of course, are beating the brakes off the deckhand mobs. The dogs have done a pretty good job. Both Failbats are now gone, but we have fully finished off one group of archers. And I think the other one took a little bit of damage, but for the most part, my opponent just lost one group of archers at the cost of 2 Failbats and some damage on the dogs. But more importantly, it bought more time for my Colossus and my mortars to just generate that steady value. So the mortars are going to continue going after the archers here. In the front line, it looks like the Hiles are probably going to be breaking through. It looks like the Star of Averlorn plus Foz protection has gone down because that was where LUTHOR was fighting. And the Silver Helms are going to be helping out in the front line as well. So all of the deckhand mobs in the initial engagement are pretty much offline. I did pull my dogs back. And from here, I do also use the Hornswoggle. So I'm trying to get on Alarielle and do some damage. My guns are now opening up on these very exposed white lines. So the battle's pretty close. Bounce and power may be a little bit in my favor, but the Hiles still have a ton of spears in reserve back here, but they definitely need to push those guys forward. The dogs have really been, I think, stretching his micro a little bit. You can see the dogs are going to be trying to get on these archers back here, but he does, of course, have some spearmen. Now, in the front line, you can see that these spearmen and white lines are starting to punch through. The zombie pirate deckhand mobs having some problems. In the back line, the Silver Helms are trying to get back in there, but I do kind of tar pit them with the dogs. I use a summon as well, and you can see that the black spot is going to be turning about face here with the support of these Vampire Fleet Captain, who I believe has taunt. I'm not sure if I used it, but just that withering gunfire really coming in. And from the other side as well, the Silver Helms are going to be trying to get in, but I make sure to keep the halberds right on top of the mortars so that if he wants to get those, he's going to have to commit some heavy resources or really just kind of grind it out. So these guys are going to be turning around again. These black spot is just doing so much work this game, getting a ton of kills, and that charged defense is just so damn good. Granted, I don't know if they get it when they're like shooting, but I feel like they do. It kind of looks like they did at the very least, but the Silver Helms are going to get taken out there, no problem. But the white lines are starting to push through in the back. Some of these spears are trying to help out against LUTHOR Harkin back here, but basically I went after Alarielle with LUTHOR. I got a breath attack. I was able to do some really good damage, and that kind of distracted this whole defensive force. And from there, my last group of scurvy dogs is really getting a ton of value. We feasted on the souls of these archers. They're now shattered, and from there, we're going to be bouncing over here to go after these guys. So LUTHOR single-handedly just occupying a massive amount of the high elf forces, and it's really taken a lot of the pressure off the back line, which is a little bit scary, actually. The white lines are punching through here, but that's what's really cool about the Necrofex Colossus, is even though it's like a ranged centric unit, it's still going to be very powerful here in melee, probably going to terror out these guys, and will certainly help these zombie pirate deckhand mobs with polearms win this fight, because he's going to be stomping the yard and doing some really good AoE damage. So there's another group of white lines coming in, but it looks like both mortars are pretty much online. This group just still has all 3, and this one has all 3. Some Silver Helms are coming back in, but when you do use the black spot against high elves, if you guys are going to use it, I highly recommend keeping it really far back. Don't use it like up in the infantry line, because the archers will tear it apart. Use it as like a really far backline defensive unit. It's so good against Reavers and Silver Helms and Dragon Princes. It pretty much fends all of them off. So right here, you can see that some of the white lines do indeed get terror routed temporarily by the big old Colossus right here, and the halberds are really going to capitalize on that. It's going to be a good situation. And finally, he is able to catch my last doggos over here using Alarielle and some of the archers, but his archers have taken a beating, and they're kind of to the point now with 36 models here and severe damage. These ones pretty much 22 models, and the dogs I can simply run back and come back in and back and forth and back and forth. They're not really going to be super combat effective. Certainly not going to be able to tear apart my army like 4 or 5 archers would. And it's definitely not a bad situation. So the halberds are holding pretty firm here. We do have a pit fight. So here you can see that big old LUTHOR Harkin is going to be going after the noble. And what's always cool about LUTHOR compared to, when he's fighting ground units, is he's pretty much always going to get the jump. So I do get the Hornswoggle. He does respond with the Foz protection to kind of make him a little bit tougher. But LUTHOR is able to give him the business and actually terror at him, which is quite nice. And Alarielle, her only real protection is going to be this noble. So if I can finish off this noble and get some solid damage, we're going to be in great shape. So when he did commit more resources here to the front line, I am going to be getting my angry doggos, getting into the back line, feasting on these archers, and that's really going to open up a lot. I mean, now there's going to be no range pressure coming in from the high elves, which they really need in this matchup. So we do have a 2v1 fight. It's going to be the noble and the pigeonless here. They're going to be fighting against LUTHOR, but LUTHOR is a terror in the night. And I still do, of course, have some Winds of Magic for Invocations of Nehek if I need it. And you can see from here, LUTHOR does beat the brakes off that noble. Now, he's not just a terror guys fighting. So oftentimes when you have like a flying lord on a dragon or something, they're going to have one attack, right? LUTHOR actually shoots while he's fighting in melee as well. So he gets so much damage in. His DPS is insane. That breath attack there, just melting Alarielle. And from here, we're going to be going in to try and goon her out. And the balance power is pretty heavily in my favor now. We've also moved up the black spot. And the black spot is going to be teeing off on the Pigeon Queen. We're just going to be dropping our summons. I actually didn't use like any Winds of Magic for a vast portion of the game. In the very beginning, like the first 2-3 minutes of the battle, I maybe used one summon, if at all. I was really kind of holding it in the back pocket. And it's certainly paying off here in the late game. There's kind of a bit of a philosophy with like managing your Winds of Magic. Like if you cast a bunch of spells in rapid succession, it's going to make you get depleted quite a bit quicker. But if you're very conservative, cast a spell, wait for it to recharge before you cast another one, you can really optimize your Winds of Magic and just get a lot more use out of it. So in that case, I was very patient, didn't really need to rush any summons, and it certainly paid off. So as far as the build goes, I think that Noctilus on the Colossus would have been a little bit more punishing against this build. Just having the double Colossus plus just summon spams is pretty nasty. But LUTHOR Harkin is also quite viable. He's very good at like sniping lords and characters. Alarielle got shut down. I was able to just punish that noble, whereas Noctilus wouldn't have been able to kill the noble quite as easy. And yeah, he was good. I mean, having a flying character is always useful. He has breath attacks. He brings a lot to the table for sure. And I really just think that Luthor is like a super top tier lord, I think, as far as like the entire game goes. If you compare him to other characters, he brings a lot to the table. He has good abilities. He's a great duelist. He's powerful, but of course he just gets overshadowed by Noctilus. You don't really get to see him in action too much, but in this case, he did a really good job for sure. And as far as the build goes, it's pretty much my standard build against the High Elves. Sometimes I'll mix a Noctilus and a single Colossus and then get a Gunnery Wide as well to kind of just make sure those Colossus can really generate good value. But this build, pretty strong for sure. Frontline did its job. The Halberds did their job. The Black Spot was really, really good. And you couldn't really shut it down using cav units. You have to get back there with archers. But if you create enough of a buffer between the archers and you're using your Scurvy Dogs and Bats effectively, you shouldn't have too much of a problem with that. And the Mortars were pretty good as always. Yeah, my opponent's build was solid. The one thing I might actually change up would just be going a little bit lighter on the Silver Helms. I feel like they didn't pay for themselves. Everything else in his army is like, pretty threatening against my force, but Silver Helms, like, I don't know. There's too many like deckhand mobs with polearms. I think maybe just cut all 3 Silver Helms, mix 2 Reavers. So just get 2 Reaver archers, those are not archers, but 2 standard Reavers, and those guys are going to be able to cause a ton of disruption. They'll be able to kill the Scurvy Dogs. They're faster, they're cheaper, and then from there you can even buffer your main force a little bit more. That would just be my 2 cents. So very well played to my opponent, Ryan CA. I actually asked him if he works at Creative Assembly, and he said he did not, so I'm not sure what that means, but very well played to Ryan CA, and hopefully you guys enjoyed this Vampire Coast versus High Elf game. Have an excellent night, guys, and take care.